Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining the Southern California Water Coalition's Stormwater Matters. This is our sixth installment of our What Matters series as we continue to provide education programs and issue analysis of what matters in water. I want to thank you all for joining us. We have actually in our RSVPs today a record crowd, which shows and demonstrates the tremendous interest in water-related issues, but specifically to today's topic on stormwater. We want to thank our sponsors for today that make these things possible: Las Virgenes Municipal Water District, Jacobs, HDR, Cordoba, and Carollo Engineers. We thank you for sponsoring today's program. And as we always do, we like to thank our founding sponsors, which really drive our organization and make things possible for us: the Inland Empire Utility Authority, the Irvine Ranch Water District, San Bernardino County, Los Angeles County Public Works, Riverside County Flood Control, the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, and the West Basin Municipal Water District. A couple of quick housekeeping items before we get going on our program this morning. We do want you to know that we are recording, and so this program will be available on the Southern California Water Coalition website following today's program. We will also be taking questions as part of our program today, but I wanted to make sure that since everybody, with the number of folks we have signed up, it really wasn't possible for live questions. So we'll ask you, if you have a question through the course of the program, use the chat function in your Zoom box. We'll be taking those, batching those together, and they'll be fed to me. And so when we get to that portion of the program, I'll ask the questions of our panelists. And so without further ado, let me go into and tell you who we have today, because with the backdrop of the California Water Resiliency Portfolio released about a week and a half ago by the state of California, this topic and where stormwater fits in that portfolio became really pertinent. The Southern California Water Coalition Stormwater Task Force historically has looked at the various aspects of stormwater to provide policymakers with information and analysis so that they can make informed decisions at whatever level they happen to see it. With Measure W in Los Angeles, I will tell you, frankly, this has really become the epicenter for what, when, where, and how stormwater projects will be implemented and how they are going to work. To help us talk about that today, we have some tremendous panelists that I think you'll really get a lot out of. These are experts not just in the region, but really recognized throughout the country for their perspective. First, we have with us Mark Pestrella. He's the director of Los Angeles County Public Works. Mark is no stranger to the stormwater issue and to water issues in general. Also with us today is David Pedersen, general manager of the Las Virgenes Municipal Water District. With us as well is Enrique Zaldivar, director and general manager of the Los Angeles Sanitation and Environment, and Robert Ferrante, the general manager of the Sanitation Districts of Los Angeles. So gentlemen, I want to thank you all. And so that we let you know who is on the line with us, we do have, and this is a participatory item, we have a poll for you to take a look at. We'd like to know who's here, who's with us. So if you would, click on a box that you think appropriately maybe reflects yourselves. We have either public servants working in state or local government, water wonks, you know who you are, private sector all the way, those people, some like to say, that have real jobs. How about the nonprofit by nature? Call me honorable. Who of you out there have been appointed or elected? Regulators? Yeah, we like regulators too. Ivory tower? Academia? Anybody in academia with us today? Or if you just don't know and you're still trying to figure it out, just like those national political polls, you can choose to simply abstain. I'm going to give that just a second. And oh, look at this. Overwhelming. We have public servants working with state and local government. We got about 12% of you that are working in water, 24% in private sector, 3% are you with us from the NGO community. Thanks for being with us. Honorables, we got almost 10%. 9% of you are elected or appointed officials. 2% of you regulators. 3%, we do have some academia with us. And yes, there are still 3% of you still working on trying to figure that out. All of it, thank you for being with us. So with that, panel, you have seen who's on the line, who's paying attention. So Mark Pestrella, let me kick it off with you. As I opened in my remarks, Los Angeles County really has become kind of that epicenter. everybody wants it because, you know, you're the one guy, you're the one county that actually went out and passed a funding measure. And with the money comes a lot of interest, and I imagine comes with it a lot of challenges. You want to share what's a little bit about the Los Angeles County experience and where the issue of stormwater sort of fits into what you're doing?
Sure, Charlie. Thanks so much for having me, and welcome to all the participants today. I think it's just a great sign that we have so much interest in this issue, and of course, water in general is so important to LA County and the resilience of our communities. At LA County Public Works, we like to say water is life, and just feel so privileged to be a part of the panel today and of the larger water community that's serving Los Angeles County. So thank you for having me, Charlie, and thank you for giving us an opportunity to maybe educate and learn from those that are on the line about what's going on locally. You know, as I said, we do believe water is life in LA County. LA County Public Works is the largest public works agency in the United States. And one of the major sectors of our department is water resource management. Our vision for water in LA County, which we share with the partners on the phone and others, is that we want to have safe, clean, and reliable water for all people. So LA County, I've been asked to give an overview today, and then the other folks on the speakers here will be telling you about their agency's work and what they're working on specifically, their component of meeting that resiliency challenge when it comes to water. But just to set the stage for those that may or may not know, or maybe some people who live in LA County and didn't know some of this, you know, LA County happens to be the largest urban county in the nation, with a third of the state's population living in LA County. Over 10 million people live and work in Los Angeles County. There are 88 cities and more than 140 unincorporated communities in Los Angeles County. And with that large of a population, you can imagine the intense demand for water. In fact, the water demand here is the highest of any urbanized county in California. It's currently estimated at 1.6 million acre feet, or 521 billion gallons a year of water to serve all those people and their needs. And our water portfolio for LA County is broken up. I mean, it's debated, but it's pretty much broken up as follows. Stormwater right now, stormwater captured and reused for drinking water supply is about 30% of our portfolio. 62% of the overall regional portfolio is still imported water, and right now recycled water standing at about 8%. There'll be differences in regional and local differences in that portfolio, but that is the large portfolio of LA County covering all the sections. You've got that map in front of you that kind of shows you the area, all 4,000 square miles of Los Angeles County there. Pretty amazing. In terms of infrastructure, LA County water infrastructure, the County of Los Angeles manages the precious resource at all stages of the water cycle. It's pretty important to know that, what's interesting about it is that my partners on the line, some of them, one or two of them are retail water providers. Enrique and Robert are actually treating, water as it comes and becomes effluent and into their system and is reused as that 8% portion. We want to increase that, of course. Our department plays a major role in the capture of local stormwater. In fact, our department, through the County Flood Control District, captures a full 1/3 of the drinking water supply for Los Angeles County through a series of systems that includes 14 major dams. You can see a picture of one of them here, 500 miles of open channel and 26 spreading grounds that, again, capture about somewhere in the order of 200,000 to 300,000 acre feet a year, with the ability to replenish the groundwater supply through those spreading grounds. We also serve as a retailer for the community, LA County Public Works, and our water supply is currently, or our customer base is about 250,000 people. Makes us about the third largest water retailer in Los Angeles County. We have been for many years, and I do like to put the challenge to my people who are in the stormwater business in our department, to become and to maintain ourselves as the premier stormwater agency in the region and in the state. And as a part of that, operating all that infrastructure, we have been looking at the way we maintain, operate the infrastructure and moving towards multi-benefit stormwater solutions for quite some time. originally starting out with assets like the LA River and some of these major dams that were only for flood control purposes, and over time making investments to turn them into multi-benefit projects. In fact, this reservoir has been a drinking water supply for some time, but multiple reservoirs in our system have been reinvested in so that we can actually capture stormwater and replenish with the water there, and not just have a single focus flood control facility. Now, what we've learned over a century of managing stormwater infrastructure is that there's no single or all-purpose solution for protecting our rivers, lakes, creeks, and ocean. In fact, what we really learned is, the impacts and the consequences of the infrastructure built in the, early 1900s and up until this time. And then those impacts have caused some things that we think we can do better about. And things like the disparity in design that cause some inequity in terms of water supply to communities. And there's a picture here of the LA River. You look at what this design did in terms of its economic impacts, but also the environmental impacts. And although it was the LA River was pretty much a single purpose system, it moved flood water through the system, and actually moved sewage for quite some time too as well. And it did a great job of helping the economy of Los Angeles grow in the background. What it also did, the consequence, as you can see, is it caused massive urbanization. It caused more flooding, actually, believe it or not, in the area, a sense of safety that's probably not totally real in the system. And it also created disparity in communities, both dividing the community, excluding the community. Gentrification occurred. And as you can see, we pretty much paved over LA with the LA River when we built the system. It's an eloquent system that moves water, but it doesn't do too good a job of actually capturing, cleaning, and saving water. And that's what we seek to do in the future, is to create more opportunity to unpave LA, to provide equity in our system, and to create multi-benefit projects that better serve the needs of Los Angeles County. So, this has come about by listening to communities as we make major investments to optimize our system and create infrastructure that is ready for the 21st century. Our response to this is working collaboratively across those jurisdictions that I mentioned earlier and the 200 water retailers that exist in Los Angeles County. In fact, recently we've embarked upon a plan called the LA Water Plan and Los Angeles Water Plan, and its goal is to enhance infrastructure, create livable communities, healthy watersheds, resource optimization, and collaboration and coordination. And I think in that last one, collaboration and coordination is important for all of us to hear, in that what I have always said, and I truly believe after 30 years of being in the business, is the problem in water is governance, that it is no one individual's problem or fault, but that in fact all the different segregated governance has caused this inequity I spoke about earlier. The investments that we intend to make, again, are going to be multi-benefit in an attempt to address that, but they cannot be made without the investment and collaboration of the agencies like LA County Sanitation District, Las Virgenes Water District, Metropolitan Water District, the City of Water Power, Long Beach, all those major players, and all the small ones in between, places like Sativa. So, when people ask us what the focus is, or they ask me what the focus is these days, these slides that you're about to see sort of tell you what we look towards. We support a stormwater portfolio that includes low flow diversions and multi-benefit projects from A to Z. In fact, you'll hear about low flow diversions in a minute, and what an eloquent solution, combining single focus and siloed infrastructure into a solution that is really one of the premier ways to address stormwater. Or moving to projects like the one in this slide, the Rory Shaw Wetlands Project, that will capture, treat, and beneficially reuse stormwater while delivering a wide range of other community benefits. These are all, it's all examples, excellent examples of collaboration, and specifically that project between the City of Los Angeles and the county to build a regional multi-benefit project that reduces the region's need for imported water while protecting rivers, lakes, and beaches. I want to thank everybody on the line who's here, and I'm really looking forward to the Q&A part of this so I can hear what our stakeholders are thinking, and I'm really interested in what your inquiries will be today. So with that, Charlie, I'm going to turn it over to you and let my fellow speakers take over.
Mark, thank you for that. So next up, we have David Pedersen. And David, you've been a part of the Water Coalition's Stormwater Task Force and what we've been looking at here for a number of years. I mean, the issue of stormwater is not new to us as a coalition. And part of that is we produce white papers or content. We do that analysis that I talked about in the opening. You know, what does stormwater mean? What really works? What doesn't work? You know, based on data and science. And I know that this next iteration of our white paper is something that you have really taken charge of and sort of leading, again, as Mark just described, a coalition of entities really looking at stormwater. Describe for us about sort of what is it that you've sort of narrowed the focus on this year?
Thank you, Charlie. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. Again, my name is Dave Pedersen. I'm the general manager of Las Virgenes Municipal Water District. For those of you who aren't familiar with our agency, we're a retail water and wastewater agency in the western portion of LA County. So I also serve as the chair of the North Santa Monica Bay Watershed Area Steering Committee. And so what that tells you is that I either have trouble saying no, or when at the time comes to say not it, I was not quick enough. But all joking aside, we are an agency that really has looked at water in the way that Mark described, holistically, and really looking for opportunities for collaboration. And I think that is the theme of this white paper. And what I'm planning to share with you, some of the outcomes of the white paper, you'll see that this is really an effort in looking at water from different perspectives and bringing together those different perspectives, those different roles and responsibilities, and leveraging them together to produce results. So the white paper here, the title is shown. The paper involves tapping existing infrastructure to create water supply and water quality solutions. So it is an effort to look at multi-benefit projects. When we talk about existing infrastructure, mostly what I'm referring to is our existing wastewater collection and treatment system. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. I realize that's a long title, but we were trying to be descriptive of really what we're trying to accomplish. And it wasn't easy to do that without putting that title together in that way. I did want to highlight that although Las Virgenes is the administering agency that's helping to bring this effort forward, it's really an effort that involves many people and agencies, including my colleagues who are on this panel. And I wanted to thank them, Mark, Enrique, and Robert. Each of them individually and their agencies have contributed a tremendous amount to this study and the point that we are at already. Also, Jacobs Engineering is the lead in terms of managing the work and the technical work for this study. And then the overall effort is actually being overseen by a group of 13 agencies. And you can see all of their logos who are on the screen here. I did want to especially recognize Metropolitan Water District. Their logo is shown in the center, and that's because they provided a large amount of the funding through a grant that was approved as part of what they call their Future Water Supply Actions funding program. So a little bit of background about the white paper. And I'll tell you, I'm not going to go into a lot of technical detail because this is a high-level presentation, but I'll tell you about some of the drivers and how this came about. So the white paper, it was done in 2 phases, and we're nearing the completion of what we call phase 2 of the white paper. So stepping back a bit, phase 1 of the work on the white paper actually began in early 2018. And that effort was at the same time when Measure W was being formulated. And I was fortunate to be part of the stakeholder advisory committee for Measure W that was helping to provide input to the county. And I was representing water agency perspectives. As that effort moved forward, the Measure W process, there was naturally a focus on strategies to handle stormwater. And one of the key strategies in the county is to capture and infiltrate stormwater. This next slide, please. So capturing and infiltrating stormwater is a really, really effective strategy. In fact, I would say I agree with Mark that there is no single strategy, but it is one of the key tools to manage and create new water supply from stormwater. And I certainly appreciate that. A concern though that I had is that my part of the county, which on this map is shown to the left-hand side, primarily the Malibu Creek watershed and some of the coastal watersheds around it really does not have geology or soils that support infiltration of groundwater. The other challenge is we don't overlie a usable groundwater basin. And so I was concerned that as Measure W moved forward, that there was a possibility that our part of the county could be underrepresented, and perhaps there would not be viable projects that could provide benefits to the taxpayers of our part of the county. Now, I raised this issue in the stakeholder process, and again, want to credit the county for really listening and doing an awesome job to hear the comments and concerns and adapt the program. When I did bring up this issue, what I learned and realized is that this was not an issue that was unique to my part of the county. There's other parts of the county, primarily along the coastal plain, where the same challenge exists. And I did want to give a shout out to Rob Whitaker with the Water Replenishment District, and also Tony Zampiello with the main San Gabriel Basin Water Master, because both of them also recognized that this was a challenge and something that we needed to look at a little bit more closely. So this map here, it shows the LA Basin, and it shows the different watersheds of the LA Basin. And the shaded area that you see is the area of the county in the LA Basin that has soils that are suitable for infiltration and that overlie an unconfined groundwater basin. So these are the areas where capture and infiltrate is a really effective strategy. You'll notice the different shading or colors, and as the colors become more reddish, that those are the areas that have been urbanized and paved, and so those areas are less permeable. So even with that area, which makes up 28% of the land area of the LA Basin, there's a lot of impermeable surfaces. And with that also in mind, you need to consider there's 72% of the land area that really could benefit from an alternate strategy that provided an option to the capture and infiltrate focus. Next slide. So at the same time when this work was happening in 2018, the stakeholder group for Measure W, there was a recognition that there were shared challenges, or for the glass half full folks, opportunities. And these were opportunities that really were available to the different agencies that were responsible for water. And this diagram shows really how those fit together and provide an opportunity for collaboration. So from a wastewater perspective, all of the wastewater agencies, mine included, have been challenged with declining wastewater flows. And that's really driven by urban water conservation. Moving to the right, on the water delivery side, we are also challenged with a growing need to invest in local water supplies to improve our resiliency and our reliability. And then center bottom, the municipalities of LA County, including the cities in my service area, were faced with a challenge of improving their receiving water quality and implementing measures to comply with stringent stormwater regulations. So when you look at those three challenges or opportunities, there's a space in the middle that they all come together, and that if we work together effectively, we can develop solutions that address all three of them and provide benefits to our common ratepayers. So next slide, please. So what I'm really talking about here, and I haven't explained really the strategy, is what the alternate strategy of diversions. And what I'll explain is what we're talking about is permissive diversion. So the diagram here shows the storm drain on the left. It shows a diversion of storm water from that drain system to a sanitary sewer, to the water reclamation facility, ultimately to produce additional water for recycling, and then through potable reuse to serve as a new source of drinking water. Now you'll see that there's a couple different modes by which this can happen, whether it be directly from the storm drain to the sewer, or storm drain to water reclamation facility, or even receiving water directly to the reclamation facility. But in any case, the objective here is create a new source of drinking water, while at the same time providing a water quality benefit in cleaning up either dry weather flows or first flush stormwater. So the little valve symbols on the diagram, they're intended to indicate that what we're talking about here is permissive diversion. So it's a controlled diversion. It's very much different than a gravity uncontrolled system. And really that's recognizing that our downstream systems do have, in some cases, capacity limitations, and we need to be sure that we don't overwhelm those downstream systems. So when you look at this approach, you may be thinking that this is not a new idea at all. And you will be right. This isn't a new idea. In fact, there's lots of diversion facilities throughout the county, and LA County Public Works and LA San, they're actually both leaders in implementing these types of diversions. So this effort and the white paper is really about taking an existing strategy that has proved already to be very effective in LA County and taking it to the next level. So then the question comes up, well, what is different and how is this really taking things to the next level? So if you look at the current diversions throughout the county, what you'll find is that they're primarily concentrated along the coast. And their focus when they were implemented is beach water quality. And each of them, they're equipped with a rain gauge, and they're designed and set up that they turn off immediately upon first rain. Now, when you look at beach grades and beach water quality, they have done a tremendous job to improve beach water quality. So what we are really looking at is leveraging that and that success and implementing it at the next level, which would be taking also not only dry weather flows, but first flush stormwater that generally carries the largest amount of pollutant loading downstream. And then also looking at implementing the strategy not only along the coast, but along some of our upstream in our watersheds along some of the receiving waters. Recognizing that a lot of these receiving waters that lead to our beaches are also impaired themselves. So one of the key advantages of the diversions, our region's wastewater treatment plants are designed for the very purpose of treating these pollutants. When you think about bacteria, nutrients, these facilities are designed with that in mind. The other thing about a diversion that's really powerful is that you can directly measure and you can actually quantify the amount of the pollutants that are removed. An example would be for nitrogen, you can measure the pounds of nitrogen that are removed and prevented from flowing downstream and impairing that waterway. So there is more work to be done on this white paper and what we're calling phase 2. One of the key elements that's going to be really important and hopefully useful to those of you who are watching is a roadmap or a guide for cities, and especially small contract cities, on how you could implement this strategy if it was something that you found to be helpful or useful, and how you could approach your wastewater agency, whether it be LA San, Las Virgenes, or the county sanitation districts, and explain what types of information would they be looking for and how would they be evaluating that to determine if it was a viable project for your city to help in managing stormwater. So a couple conclusions or takeaways from the study and from the white paper as far as where we are now. And there's 3. The first is really that water and wastewater agencies can really be valuable partners in assisting in managing stormwater and even achieving regulatory compliance for stormwater. When we look second at the 21 water reclamation plants in the LA Basin, and if you take in aggregate the capacity of all of those plants, what you will find is currently there is almost 500 million gallons per day of capacity available in those plants. And so that's a lot. Now, that's an aggregate number, and you need to look at each individual plant and its capabilities independently, but there is available capacity, and it's not insignificant in these facilities throughout the county. The other thing is when you look at those wastewater facilities and you look pre-drought and post-drought, and so I'm talking about 2010, before our most recent drought emergency, and 2017, you'll see that influent flows to all of these plants collectively has declined by about 90 million gallons per day. Now compare that to numbers that have typically been cited for dry weather flows in LA County, which is about 100 million gallons. It's comparable. It gives you an idea of what is possible. And then last and most important, I think, is that using our existing infrastructure, and that's existing and paid for by our ratepayers collectively, is the fastest and most cost-effective way to generate water quality and water supply benefits. Thank you. I'll turn it back to you, Charlie.
So thank you for that, David. So I'm going to turn next to Enrique, and just part of what we were teasing him a little bit earlier. I love the picture that is behind you because it really exemplifies the investment that has been made in the sanitation sewer process, and where Los Angeles is, and the operation that you have the privilege to run. But from your perspective and somebody who runs sanitation, Enrique, so how do you see the work that David is doing and where this white paper is headed?
Thank you, Charlie. First of all, let me thank you and thank my fellow panelists. It's an honor to be sharing the virtual stage with them. I want to particularly thank Dave Pedersen, for bringing glamour, celebrity, and attention to the underground world of low flow diversions. In all seriousness, Dave, I do appreciate you bringing attention to this most important strategy in our quest for water quality objectives and local water supply augmentation. And as much as I like this picture, almost as much as the picture on my background, Lynn, can you move on to the next slide? So, we feel blessed in LA San to be an agency that really, whose mission encompasses a wide spectrum of the environmental services world. We want to be known and call ourselves a zero wasted water agency. Certainly 3 of our areas are pretty self-explanatory, but I want to definitely speak a little bit of what this environmental sphere encompasses. We do things like brownfields remediation. We have a huge and growing biodiversity program that complement much of our other more specific programs. But what is most relevant today for the topic is our wastewater and our stormwater programs. And let me go on to the next slide, Lynn. We talked about, certainly Dave and Mark did, about the different strategies. Here, depicting is the 2 most common technical strategies, which for when it comes to being able to mine opportunities in the storm drain system and its nexus to the wastewater system, but reclamation and infiltration. And you saw Dave's map in showing where infiltration is possible and where it is not. Clearly, straight for reclamation is definitely a viable strategy and opportunity. However, I do not want today's emphasis to by any means subtract from LA San's incredible track record of us being able to do projects that are based not on any of these 2 necessarily. Some of our most iconic projects made possible by Propo earlier toward the end of the last decade. Echo Park restoration. That is a pass-through type of stormwater enhancement project, largely, if not strictly, for community benefits and community enhancement benefits. Machado Lake in the San Pedro area, a beautiful site, beautiful destination, equally. Not necessarily any of these practices were employed there. That project was largely, if not entirely, for community benefits with water quality at its core. Next slide, please. I always appreciate Mark's historical perspective on the LA River, where, as we look back, as we look now as to decisions that our foreparents made a decade ago, or I should say a century ago, or even longer ago, and how we maybe now can say, well, that might not have been the best strategy, but one that I am particularly appreciative of when our foreparents made decisions. In this case, bringing a two separate conveyance systems to our underground, one for storm drain and one for sewer, one for wastewater, one for stormwater. Most of the countries, many of you would know, are actually a combined system. And so in being able to appreciate decisions made a century ago, unlike perhaps the LA River, this is one that I'm always appreciative of. And this is what enables us to be able to create opportunities such as what we're talking about today. Next slide, please. Now, for some reason, and it's fine to be candid about things. I mean, low flow diversions do not necessarily always rank at the highest of priorities for strategies for achieving water quality and creating community enhancement benefits. So leave it to our engineers, myself included, to try to come up with a different name. And I will always recognize that this is why we need marketing professionals to work alongside engineers. And we've come up with this name, Removal and Reuse Urban Flow Systems. Dave, I hope you appreciate our renaming of it. R square UFS, so let's stick to the LFDs, okay? We just wanted to put this out there as our engineers working hard on trying to, repurpose LFDs. But this depicts the Bayona Creek watershed, which Dave showed in his slides in regards to all of the watersheds in the LA County area. And the attributes that I show on here are applied to the Bayona Creek watershed, 8 agencies, 128 square miles, highly urbanized. 33% roughly of the population live within communities identified as disadvantaged communities, and I'll speak as to why that is relevant. And I don't definitely want us to forget that there is a water quality value to everything we do in regards to stormwater. But I want to definitely speak of, for us in LA San, the Bayona Creek watershed is hugely important because our water quality objectives apply to on the basis of that particular watershed. However, for purposes of funding, as Charlie alluded to in introducing Mark, it's the Central Santa Monica watershed that is hugely important for us. In the end, I want the audience to know that we love them both. And that, our passion in the end is all about watershed protection. And both watersheds are very important to us. Next slide. Now, David alluded to being able to make use of existing infrastructure. What you see here, it's obviously an aerial view of what had been a decommissioned peak flow attenuation facility. This is where we would mitigate the impacts of peak flow in our wastewater conveyance system. We had decommissioned it maybe 2 decades ago. It sat rusting away. Bayona Creek, I talked about the water quality objectives that apply to our Bayona Creek watershed. They're hugely important. And then came the new value to everything watershed that Mark talked about. And that is the augmentation of local water supplies. And so this particular facility achieves exactly all of that, taking an existing infrastructure, looking at the opportunity of adjacency, in this case, to the Bayona Creek. Bayona Creek has a dry weather flow of roughly 20 MGD, and it's got very specific water quality requirements. So our vision here, and it's more than a vision, we've actually turned this into a project, is to take the water from the Bayona Creek, run it through this existing facility, do some treatment, and send it over to send it over to Hyperion for water reclamation and water supply augmentation in the form of recycled water, and then release cleaned up water back into the creek for obviously ecosystem sustainability. Next slide, please. And this is somewhat the crux of the nexus of the wastewater and stormwater systems when it comes to augmenting local water supplies. Hyperion, the facility that it's in my background, it's our most iconic facility of all of the four that we own. But here you will see the numbers that speak to the opportunity that Dave talked about. An opportunity of 184 MGD in available capacity for local water augmentation. And the same is true in our other water reclamation facilities located all throughout the city, but depending on the topography and the hydrology, the opportunity may vary, whether it's fully achievable and fully, that can be fully realized. Hyperion, if we can go to the next slide, is an exciting place for sure right now. Hyperion 2035 is part of Mayor Garcetti's Zero Wasted Water Initiative, in which our goal is to take all wastewater and recycle 100% of it by 2035. And Hyperion is no longer a dream. It's actually now turned into an initiative. You'll see here a timeline that we have committed to, the mayor has committed to, city council have committed to, whereby 2035, we will have Hyperion completely transformed into a zero wasted water facility. We talked about partnerships with my colleagues on the panel, specifically in Hyperion's case. I want to thank our partners in LADWP and the West Basin as we embark on this incredible journey, only 15-year journey. So I will still be able to see it in the rest of my career. For those of you who are trying to guess, I expect to see it completed, but just think about it. Up to 170 MGD of new recycled water by 2035. Think of what that does to local water supplies. And with that, last slide, please. Thank you.
Enrique, thank you for that. So let us turn now, Robert, one of the great advantages of Los Angeles County, it's really big and really diverse. One of the great challenges, yeah, it's really big and really diverse. So from your perspective, in running such a diverse area and from a sanitation standpoint, what's your views on this white paper and sort of what we're doing with stormwater?
Great. Thank you, Charlie. Thanks for having me today. I'd also quickly like to thank my fellow panelists, especially Mark, whose leadership on Measure W is really allowing us to have these conversations and to really develop these projects. Dave for his effort on the white paper, truly appreciated. And I'd like to thank Enrique for leaving me a few minutes so I can present with you as well. So thank you for that. But hopefully during my presentation here, all of you participants will perhaps see some elements that you perhaps can take advantage of when it comes to stormwater management, the types of projects we're doing and the opportunities and the locations. And just a little bit about the districts before I get into the stormwater issue. We do have 10 water reclamation plants throughout the county. What you're seeing here is a picture of our main basin or our joint outfall system plants. And you can see all of our water reclamation plants dispersed throughout the county. All of those plants currently are essentially at 100% recycling, either primarily for groundwater recharge with public works in the water replenishment district, or for other purposes, irrigation and industrial use. We do also have our large plant, joint water pollution control plant in Carson that currently discharges out to the ocean. But similar to the LA City effort, we with our partner, the Metropolitan Water District, are working on a identical plan, a similar plan to the City of Los Angeles plan to recycle the water from this facility and deliver it ultimately for groundwater augmentation. If you also, our plants are connected, of course, by sewers, and we operate the large sewers throughout our service area, and we connect into city sewers and county sewers. And if you overlay a map of our sewer system on top of the storm drain system, you will see that our sewers are either co-located or cross storm drains throughout the county. So there is one ample opportunity to cross connect the storm drain into the sewer system. And if you move over to the next slide, this kind of illustrates what Dave was really talking about with respect to the, honestly, the great water conservation that LA County has gone under in the last 20 years. And you could see our flows to our treatment plants have significantly dropped, not only through the drought, but I think through a number of water measures that cities have put in place for low flow toilets, low flow shower heads. A lot of restaurants and commercial entities have also reduced their flow. So this is, it clearly demonstrates the success of water conservation, but it also clearly demonstrates the available capacity that we have in our system to take in additional flows. And just to kind of expand a little bit on what others have said, our system isn't just designed to take in the dry weather capacity. We are designed to take in peak flows that occur during rainfall events, and we get infiltration from stormwater. Perhaps if a road is partially flooded, that water will flow through manhole covers into our system. And we are already designed to take that increased flow in our sewer systems, as well as treating that system, treating that flow through our treatment plants. So with respect to dry weather flows, we can take those. And I'll talk a little bit more about taking first flush and taking flows throughout a storm. If you could move to the next slide. As others have said, diversions are not a new concept. They're certainly not a new concept for us, and especially the county public works. We have a long partnership with them. You can see the green dots here indicate existing low flow diversions. Many of these diversions date back roughly 20 years. And as Dave mentioned, they were primarily, the original ones were along the coast. They did improve water quality and have continued to improve water quality along the beaches where they are installed. But the good thing to report is you can see in the yellow and the red that we are moving, a lot of these now are moving inland, and a lot are planned inland in terms of into the creeks and San Gabriel rivers, especially for us and other locations. And once the water is in our system, it's in a heavily regulated treatment system. Our treatment plants have their own NPDES permits with the regional board. We have monitoring requirements at them. Once the water is in our system, from a stormwater compliance point of view, you don't need to worry about it because we have the tremendous treatment and monitoring infrastructure set up in our agency to ensure that the water is cleaned and safe for discharge and reuse. And now to kind of focus and kind of really illustrate the benefits of a sewer diversion, a storm drain diversion plan, if you could go to the next slide. The next slide talks about our Carriage Crest Park project in the city of Carson. We are acting as the project managers for this project. This was an initial concept from the city of Carson that it's in the Dominguez Channel watershed, and it's adjacent to our large joint water pollution control plant, which gives this project a real big benefit. And that storm drain, tying into what Enrique was saying, it flows into Machado Lake. And yes, the city of LA spent over $100 million on rehabilitating that infrastructure now and making it a great site for the community. So this project that diverts some of the storm water into our plant truly protects Machado Lake and protects that downstream investment that the city made. And if you could flip to the next slide, I can kind of illustrate how it works. Because it is close to our plant, we can divert more than just dry weather flow. And if you click again, you'll see an animation. You can see the double reinforced concrete box storm drain flowing down. It flows into a storage tank, which is essentially nearing completion currently underneath the existing park. It's a subsurface storage tank. And then from there, it is pumped into one of the inlet sewers into the joint water pollution control plant. And the beauty of this project too is because we were so close to the plant, I think as Dave indicated on some previous slides, we not only can take the dry weather, we have a dry weather flow, we have a level gauge in the sewer system there, in the sewer. So as long as that sewer has capacity, we can continue to take water. So we could take the first flush, and if it's a minor storm, we can continue to take water throughout the rainfall event if that sewer has the capacity. So that is a big benefit of this project. And that is one thing that we're doing at various locations through the sewer system. We're kind of investing in what you'd call smart levels and turning our sewer system into a smart sewer system so that we can better anticipate locations where we can take not only, of course, the dry weather flow, but the first flush or more of the storm water as well. So just summing it up before we get to the Q&A, I think this project clearly demonstrates that, the sewer diversions can handle the dry weather flow, potentially first flush and more with controls or storage like we have in this project. In most cases, the storm drain diversion project will increase the amount of recycled water. Once we have our advanced water treatment project online at the Joint Water Pollution Control Plant, this water will be converted to additional water supply as well. And the other key component to this project is this was done under an existing park, and part of the funding and that park will be rehabilitated afterward. It will be expanded after this. So not only is this project protecting Machado Lake, which is used by a lot of the local community, but it creates an additional community asset here in the city of Carson too, with a rehabilitated park and a larger park. And finally, the other key component of diverting out of the storm drain, I think, is the certainty of treatment. Our treatment plants have been around for a while. That joint water pollution control plant's been there. It's going to celebrate its 100-year anniversary here in a few years. And you know that once it's in the sewer system and at our wastewater treatment plants, you're getting the treatment and the water quality protection that's so important as part of these storm drain or stormwater projects. And you're getting the certainty because, of course, we are regulated and have our own permits with the regional board. So with that, I just wanted to thank everybody once again for allowing me to participate, and I think we're ready for the Q&A.
Robert, thank you for that. So now that you've had a chance to sort of hear the gentlemen talk, their perspectives, and on the white paper, let me throw up another poll just so I get a feel for sort of how you see things in the audience. Take a quick moment, answer. What do you think are the most serious challenges in stormwater? Love to see the lines jump back and forth. Again, it's a little bit like a heart monitor. Make sure we know our audience has a pulse. You guys are there, being fully engaged. And while you're filling out your poll, I just, as again, a housekeeping item, because we're in such engagement, we've still got a huge audience that's with us, and I've got a whole bunch of questions for the folks I'm going to try to batch and put together. We're going to go ahead and extend our conversation to 11:30. For those of you that can stay with us, just so we can get into the Q&A, I want to be able to do that. So there we are, and our poll's closed. So what do you think? We've got 24% of you think funding for construction, 28% funding for operations and maintenance, 9% integrating community benefits into the project. Not a whole lot of you, 1% workforce development. So we may want to talk more about that in the future. Addressing emerging regulatory issues, 15%. And then 22% a willingness of agencies and others to collaborate. Really tight there among three of those results, all really focus on things like funding. So Mark, I'm going to come back to you as you unmute in the questions, because I mean, a lot of folks see potential, and it's one thing to design, it's one thing to use existing infrastructure, but everybody wants to talk about the money. And there are estimates in LA County that just to do dry weather flows or to do stormwater, it was, you know, astronomical of $20+ billion. And then there's other, you know, environmental projects and various things as you talk about multi-benefit. And we opened with the focus on LA County because of the passage of Measure W, and that now that an entity has a funding source, you know, how do you see the financing and managing all of these different expectations and all of the demands? Where is Measure W? What's its promise, and how are you seeing it come together?
Well, thanks, Charlie. And again, thanks to the panelists. I learned a lot listening to you guys give your presentations. It's really good stuff. And it's sort of what I envisioned would happen, that the leaders in each of these areas, these watersheds, if you will, and the regional leaders that are with us today would be making investments. And I'm hoping that really when you ask about Measure W, that it's incentivizing investments, and it's allowing us to leverage, Charlie, other funding on top of what's coming now, what's being brought to us, thankfully, from the citizens of Los Angeles County, and specifically the property owners within the flood control district's boundaries who are actually paying into Measure W. Specifically on the fund Measure W, just so everybody knows, I mean, we've done really well, and people have paid their fee through the property tax bill, and we've collected something in the order of $280 million this year in assessments. And interesting enough, some of you may have a question about the appeals that we've had. We've had really relatively few appeals to the program that we put together in terms of assessing people's hardscape, if you will, and what we, if you remember that our fee is based on the hardscape on a property. That 280 is going to go a long way, but not all the way, as you said, Charlie. And it is going to take multiple funding sources to put together the program. But it's also, the idea was that this is a long-term project. We do not see, for the people who are listening, we don't see building this incredible system that we're going to eventually have overnight. It's going to take some, 20 to 30 years or more to actually have a fully integrated system with all these different multi-benefit and multi-integrated approaches, including LFDs we talked about today. In terms of today, the update where we are today on Measure W, happy to tell everybody that our governance structure, which was purposely put together to be representative, have put together capital improvement plans that are on their way to the Board of Supervisors in October, which would essentially set us off on building out by watershed a set of infrastructure improvements for the community that meet the goals of Measure W, which is a water supply measure, a water quality measure, a measure in which we consider community benefits in everything we do, including greening communities and creating more opportunities for community engagement in infrastructure. And when I look over the projects that were submitted, I'm really pleased to see. But I also know that that is a limited group of projects, and some projects did not get funded in this round. I encourage those, I'm looking at Enrique, I'm encouraging those that did not receive funding this time to continue to seek funding in future rounds, because there will be future rounds. The cities who are listening, we're entering into, we're implementing our transfer agreements, and you'll be getting your direct money. That's the city of Los Angeles and all the other cities that are a part of Measure W. You will be getting direct funding here very shortly. And of course, we'll be seeking that you spend that money specifically on the benefits of water quality benefits that your community is seeking. And I really like the fact that Dave offered up that these major agencies, including ours, should be someone you rely on for technical assistance, for funding, for maintenance and operation potentially. That was another question that was there, is something I want everyone to understand, and that I had gone around and made promise on and I want to fulfill, is that LA County Flood Control District is standing ready to maintain and operate major components of this system, to add it to our assets that already exist, that I spoke of earlier in my presentation, but to also become the maintenance and operation body of the regional system that will ultimately be built out in LA County. And I think it's a big offer. And then lastly, we are looking at, and it's important to know about this, we're looking at the potential for bonding against the money that we're collecting. And that's something that we have authority to do as a flood control district. And we're in good shape to seek bonding. So that may be something for all of you to look forward to in the future. I also want to put one more plug in, if I can, is that we are seeking good flood control projects as well that meet the flood control district's criteria. We are actually putting out a call for projects shortly for projects that solve drainage deficiencies for cities. And of course, that in LA County, when we build flood control projects now, we also include water quality components to any project that we do. So there is a capital investment being made by our department, and that investment is being made regionally. So I'm really seeking to get good ideas, and I again appreciate the work that everyone has done in these watersheds to develop a set of criteria and, a set of projects going forward.
So thank you for that, Mark. So let me go back, because we got a lot of these questions, but David, with the work that you're doing, and we talked about phase 1 and phase 2 of the study, we didn't say when we expect to be able to publish. And I know today is sort of that discussion point. There's been a lot of work put to it. Share with us kind of the timing for the study and when you expect to have this completed, so we can, again, be able to broadcast and share this with folks that are interested in getting a final copy of the study.
Sure, good question. And as I mentioned, there's 2 phases of the study. The phase 1 version of the study is actually already available, and there's a link on our website where you can access that. But the phase 2 part of the study, which is what is happening now, will be ready by the end of the year, I anticipate. And we will post it and share it publicly. We'll share it with the Southern California Water Coalition so that we can get it out. The real work that remains is actually the important work for everyone participating. It's, as I mentioned, this guidebook or roadmap on how to do this and how to implement this strategy if it is something that you find to be helpful. So that's the work that's happening right now. And when that is completed, we will put together the entire white paper and make it available publicly.
So let me then jump, because we have a really good number of questions that are here. I'm going to try as best I can to, package them together so they make some sense. And I'm not just going down the list, because we would never get to all the questions that we have. But as we look at the sort of the promise of the stormwater capture and treatment, particularly for those that are running plants, we got a lot of these questions about, we're talking dry weather flows. At what point can you also accept first flush, and at what point do you really kind of need to sort of, when you get the heavy rain event, how much can you really capture and treat? What are some of the challenges with that in the division between dry weather and, say, a wet weather pattern? It's kind of a full spectrum there, but how do you segment that out? And yeah, Robert?
Yeah, I can probably jump in and answer that first. I mean, the example I gave during my talk was on a project that was essentially located across the street, across from our main plant. So between where the storm water was collected to the actual plant was very short. We have good information on the amount of capacity in that sewer. So it's very easy to put in a control system to monitor the level in that sewer and take in water. And as I mentioned before, our systems are designed for kind of our wet weather flow period. When it rains, we get infiltration into the sewers. As a result, our sewers and our treatment plants, even though they're potentially rated at a lower dry weather flow, they can take additional flow. So the dry weather isn't really an issue. What becomes an issue is when the storm drain diversions are located far away from a treatment plant. And then we would need to know and ensure that during a storm, for example, what is the level in the sewers all along that path to our treatment plants. And in many cases, that's why during dry weather, we're okay. During light storms, we should be okay. However, our first priority, of course, is to keep what's in the sewer, keep it in the sewer. We don't want any overflows. So part of the challenge, Charlie, to your question is for us, when a city or a city's consultant approaches us with a potential project, we're really looking at our sewers from the point of their project to our treatment plants. We have data we have collected during storms to see what capacity we have in that. But ultimately, we'd like to, over time, transition to a smart sewer system where we do have levels and flows in those sewers, so we can really know essentially in real time how much flow we can take. And then in those cases where we have that knowledge, we can safely take in a first flush. And I saw that there was a question just to answer that. The first flush is the start of the rainfall event, especially after it hasn't rained for a period of time prior to that, where you're really mobilizing a lot of pollutants off of the impervious surfaces into the storm drain system. So it tends to be high in pollutants. But if we could take that and then save the cleaner water for the storm drain system for other things, that's one alternative. But ultimately, we would need to know what our sewer capacity is through that. So that's kind of the challenge, and that's the main job, the first kind of step to analyzing these projects that our staff undertake.
Let me throw in, because we've talked a lot about sort of public infrastructure and the public systems, but I got a couple of questions here. It's just important for us to probably tag it, and I'm going to combine a couple of them here, but it speaks to really then private development and questions about, is there an engineering path for private development to divert storm water into sewer water, and along with that, I guess, are there strategies or envisioned in accepting industrial first flush kind of thing? How does the private sector and their requirements, their need to also be able to provide, and is this a concept that they can accept those flows? Mark, I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, I'd really like to answer it because it was one of the things that I talk about frequently, and this is like one of the opportunities, almost like a P3 opportunity between government and private sector, in that we're seeking to have large or even small, but impactful industrial private property, allow us on property, and to have them capture maybe more than their own stormwater flows, an urban runoff, maybe a neighborhood level, and then allow us to operate a facility within their facility through an arrangement like that, or to pay them to treat stormwater on site. And we have a couple situations that we've been trying to develop. I won't name the industry, but I'm happy to tell you that a number of industries who use a lot of water for their work are interested, either just from an environmental stewardship standpoint or from a compliance standpoint, well, mostly from a compliance standpoint, I imagine, to take care of their surface waters while at the same time act as a good neighbor and allow for us to actually infiltrate flows on their property or divert their flows to sewer for treatment. And so, yeah, we're excited about this. And, there's a lot of on-site infrastructure already for sewer on these facilities. They have clarifiers. They already have their own treatment on site and separate materials. But their surface water is really valuable, and it's right now being wasted off most of the time if we don't get a capture of it. So we're really seeking to take those big pieces. Just to put it in there, and guys, I'm a big Dodger fan. The Dodger Stadium parking lot's got a lot of potential. So I don't know if the Dodgers are watching, but they need to get on board with us and let's make a deal about what you're doing to run off the property on that parking lot.
So Charlie, let me chime in because I'm afraid that Robert and Mark will simply just take all the time away from me. Robert took back more than what I had taken from him, so let's balance it out. I think on both questions, it's important for in the situation of the overflows that Robert alluded to. It's both an operational, a technological, and quite frankly, a cultural adaptation when it comes to making the shift from a strictly sewer flows to now combine low flow diversions. And, we spent the last 35 years mitigating overflows. And you're not going to tell any one of our operators that it's an easy transition to now let in all this additional flow.
Mm-hmm.
So the cultural adaptation internally has to occur, and we've been working on it. Dave knows that, that's part of our sort of our cultural resistance sometimes, but for the right reasons. Mark knows, as the county does, we have a very successful low impact development program that bridges us to the private sector, because it started as a water quality initiative to begin with, but now it can very easily be transformed into water supply as well. And Mark, I think you would agree, in addition to Dodger Stadium, every school all across the county, but certainly for us, every school in LAUSD is an incredible opportunity.
Absolutely. We've got some good examples of the school districts working with us right now. But yeah, you're right, Enrique. I think, getting us out of our silos, including the private sector. It's funny you brought up the cultural issue. It seems like all of our people align with the infrastructure that they have. I mean, there's people in my department that call themselves roadies, and there's people that call themselves floodies, and now, what do you guys call yourself? Seweries or something? I don't know, sanitary sewer. But it really goes to this issue of maximizing the infrastructure for the community and integrating it for a better outcome. And so, years ago, we wouldn't have been on the same panel with each other. And it's funny because Robert and I, their agency, my agency, have been working for years. You mentioned the diversions, Dave. We've got a number of diversions already that long ago were approved. That we worked with the county sanitation district as well as LA County, LA San, to do these diversions, and they've been really, really useful and impactful. And now we want to turn that into water supply. That's the real thing, is like, let's get it to water supply. So,
if I might add on the wet weather and dry weather question, I think that's a really good one. And it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking of the two as being binary, that we're either having wet weather or dry weather. And it might be partly because our regulatory structure looks at it that way. But when you look at the hydrology of the LA basin, we have a lot of small rain events. And part of the white paper study, when it comes out, you'll see this. We looked at hydrology, and we looked at a 10-year period, and we looked at rainfall events, and then we looked at the influent flow to Hyperion. And thanks, Enrique, for being supportive of doing that. And what you see is, for one, it doesn't rain a lot in LA County, which we know, but it doesn't rain heavily a lot. We don't see real frequent intense storms, and we don't see real frequent repeat storms. And so these smaller storm events, when you have a half an inch of rain or less, which is really what we see most frequently, what we found is there was not a significant or even at times noticeable increase in influent flow at Hyperion. So what it tells you is that there's a big range or spectrum of wet weather, and some wet weather can definitely be accommodated. The answer is, of course, it depends, and you have to look at each facility individually and study it. But I think moving away from sort of the binary thinking of, it's either wet or dry is helpful, and looking at these smaller storm events that there's a lot of opportunity to capture that water.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I want to say to all of you, this has been tremendous. And as you see, this is a really complex but really rich subject. So I have one last poll. Let's go ahead and throw the poll up, because I'm always interested, what did people sort of take away? So while you're looking at that and what you take away from today's activity, and these are the kind of a portfolio of things that you can become involved with through the Water Coalition. The Stormwater Task Force, if you really want to become engaged in this on a regular basis, that's simply becoming a member, being a part of it, and you can participate in our Stormwater Task Force on a monthly basis, where these white papers are discussed. We look at the results, and then obviously we conduct seminars and webinars and things like this. So I want to say thank you to all of you for that. Look at folks, boy, if stormwater capture and management doesn't come out #1 on this poll, boy, gentlemen, then I have to retract a lot of what we said earlier in the day. But again, as a coalition, our job is to educate. And I like to say we educate so that others may advocate in their own special interest. We're just looking to get information out so people can understand where are their opportunities, where are their challenges, and where can you best engage so that you can become part of the solution? Because we're all looking for a solution, and we all know that as much as we'd like to, it's not a my way or the highway, and that's just not how government works. So to Mark's point, when we started earlier, everybody's talked about it. Collaboration really is the key. Together, we're going to make Southern California a better place to live, work, and to play. Projects like this and how we address water resiliency, water quality, water supply, this is really important for our economy, for our environment, and for our population in general. So gentlemen, I thank you all again for being with us and helping us with us. Again, our sponsors, Las Virgenes, Jacobs, HDR, Cordoba, and Corolla, thank you for helping put this program on today. Give us about 48 hours. This will be posted to our website. And for everybody that participated in today's conversation, we got you on the mail list. We will make sure that you get more information as it comes out on stormwater and on the activities of the coalition. Until we see you again next time, again, gentlemen, thank you. Thank you all for those who participated. We look forward to seeing you again next time at Southern California Water Coalition.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thanks to everybody.